So today I have with me one of the very special guests, Stephanie Brown. I'm sure that all of who are watching or who are listening, they are going to enjoy this. The next 30-40 minutes we are going to talk to Stephanie. So I found Stephanie from this New York Times article which talked about folks who are superhumans like Stephanie and who probably either their jobs were impacted due to the pandemic or they were looking to pursue their new passions. So Stephanie, I'll let Stephanie talk about her story, but Stephanie she's a army veteran. If our Yeah, so I'll let Stephanie talk about it. And but I can definitely say that she has a culinary arts background. She was a chef and now she's into technology. So Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of the amazing things you have done and how you switched from, like in your LinkedIn profile, you talk about using both your creative side and analytical side.
First off, I should say, just a minor correction. I am an Air Force veteran. I spent 11 years on active duty. Since then, I've done lots of different things. My path has been very winding. But most recently, I was indeed working in culinary arts. I went to culinary school a few years ago, graduated from Johnson & Wales University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and had been fairly happy doing that. I guess when the pandemic hit, I was working at a hotel. The hotel shut down in the middle of March with no warning, no severance, and I had to find something else, find something new. So I do have a technology background. I was a communications and computer systems operations officer when I was in the Air Force. So that's just a fancy way of saying I managed people, money, and things relating to computers. I didn't actually do any hands-on programming or development. But I've been programming and building computers since I was in high school. So this was hopping onto Trailhead with Salesforce. I am currently a Salesforce Administrator. Was just a natural thing for me. I'd heard about it years ago, but didn't really get into it because I've been in culinary for the longest time. And in deciding to do something new, I hopped on Trailhead, as I said, and just since I was laid off, I had 50 to 60 hours a week to basically work on Trailhead. And that was my full-time job for several months until I got my first certification. I'm a certified Salesforce Administrator. And then after that, I got my Platform App Builder certification. After that, I got my certified or my advanced Salesforce Administrator certification as well. And I'm currently working with a company in New York.
Yeah, thanks for correcting me. So a civilian like me, so you are an Air Force veteran. For me, everyone is from Army. So I stand corrected there. But something which is very interesting for me is, like you mentioned, I see your profile. You have been in culinary arts for 4 years, and then before that, you were an Apple certified technician. So you have a technical background. And let me ask you this. Let's say that if the pandemic didn't affect your job, would you ever consider doing what you are doing now?
I don't know that I would be where I am were it not for the pandemic and getting laid off. I was happy in culinary, but anybody who has worked in it or knows someone who has knows that it's not exactly the most lucrative career field. So, in the back of my mind, I was trying to figure out what's something else that I can do. And I should kind of correct you just a little bit too as well. I wasn't actually a chef. I was not a full-time chef. I've worked as a private chef, but my most recent position, I was working as a cook in the banquet department of the hotel. So anybody who might be listening to this and looking me up saying she's not a chef, but yes, I did actually work as a private chef doing some catering on occasions. But I honestly don't know. I don't know if I would be doing this were it not for the pandemic. So I guess I'm definitely not going to say I'm glad this happened. I mean, this has been absolutely horrible. But I am thankful for the opportunities that I've been given. So
Yeah, thanks for that. So, for the folks who are listening, and let's say they come from a non technical background and they were at jobs in industries which got severely impacted by the pandemic, what would be your advice to them? I know that you were able to get through this training. So, what would be your advice to them in terms of looking out or figuring out how can they do a career transition from a non technical field to a technical field?
Salesforce fortunately has Trailhead, which is their training website, and it's free for everyone. I also happen to be part of Trailhead Military, which not only provides the free training, but also free certifications and free instructor-led courses. So that's kind of an extra bonus that we get. But Salesforce, for me, seemed to be an easy transition, something that I think anybody can get into without having a technical background. It's a lot of reading, so if you're okay with reading, it's definitely a lot of hands-on. So whenever I talk to anybody, I am always singing the praises of Salesforce and Trailhead because I just think it's an awesome opportunity for somebody to start over. But if you're not interested in Trailhead, or if you're not interested in Salesforce specifically, there are lots of other things that you can do. I mean, you can learn how to become a WordPress web designer. You don't necessarily have to have a programming background and become a developer, but you can be a web designer. Or there are lots of other training sites out there that will teach you how to code if that's something that you're interested in. So the information is there. A lot of the times it's free. It's just a matter of sitting down, thinking about what it is that you want to do, and just going out there and finding it. It's really there at your fingertips, and it's, you know, it's there. So you just have to go out and find it and really be dedicated. You have to spend the time. You have to be focused. Find a place. If you've got a family in the house with you, find a place, you know, a time, let them know what you're doing, and to, you know, lock yourself up in a room if you need to. For me, what worked was actually building a daily calendar. Even though for 50 to 60 hours a week for several months, I was only doing Salesforce, I had to actually build a training calendar. So I knew every day what subject I was studying. I knew when I was participating in a seminar that talked about certifications, or a seminar that talked about a particular subject that I was studying. I set my certification exam date in the future, so I had an end date to work toward. I'm finding that if you don't have a concrete something to look forward to, it gets really easy to get off track, and you'll put it off and say, you know, I'll study tomorrow. I've got some time. I want to go out and have some fun today. So for me, having that training calendar really kept me focused, and it kept me on track.
Yeah, you know, this is very helpful. You gave so many good questions while sharing your story of Trailhead. Now, somebody who had a day job or who has a day job and other priorities, family, kids, various other things, who is looking at switching careers or moving into technology, and they start with, let's say, the Trailhead or whatever training they need, what are the minimum resources you think that bare minimum they need to get started? I'm sure you would say that they need access to the internet, but what else do you think they need to make sure that their preparation or the training, they have all the resources? What are the minimum resources they need for doing this training?
To do a transition or make a transition from a non-tech career to a tech career, really the only minimum requirements you need are, of course, access to the internet and a computer. That's it. And you can do your work anywhere in the world. If you want to work on the beach, you can work on the beach. And you know, I would say that it's, you know, it's helpful to have a quiet place. You know, if you do have, as I said before, if you do have a family with children. It helps if you have a small place or a quiet place where you can study and prepare. But really, a computer and an internet, and the internet is all you need.
And and what is the hardest part of this transition when you are going through training? What would you had a technical background, but folks who are used to a day job going to a place like, let's say, a restaurant or a retail location and doing a job of, let's say, a cashier, what is your advice to them in terms of what is the change in the work schedule that this kind of a training and this kind of a job brings in?
As far as the schedule goes, this kind of training, it actually, I went from a schedule that was all over the place because, when you're working in culinary, or you're working in, I should say, hospitality in general, or you're working in service or retail, the hours are just, they vary. No one typically has set hours. So transitioning from that to this, I have a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job. Sometimes I work extra hours at night or on the weekend, but that's my choice. It's not a requirement. And, and you can, if you're lucky enough to get in with a company that has, great benefits, paid time off, sick time, it's definitely a step up from being in hospitality, where you're, if you're working in a restaurant that doesn't provide those things. So does that answer your question?
No, yes, that does. And it's probably, it would help to understand, a day in the life of a culinary arts person versus a day in the life of a techie person. How would the day change? What are the benefits of working as a techie or in technology versus culinary arts? What do you see? What do you miss? What do you like? Those kind of things.
I'll start with the similarities between culinary arts and working in IT. It's primarily, for me, it's the creativity, it's the thinking, problem solving, and just working with my hands. So I didn't lose that when I left culinary. The one thing that I, of course, miss is being in the kitchen, cooking, feeding people. I still do that at home, but it's just me with, kind of hard to entertain in the middle of a pandemic. So, so I definitely miss the cooking. And trying to remember the other part, the first part of your question.
What is it like? You talk about similarities. What is it that you like about the transition, and what is it that you miss about the transition?
What I like about the transition from culinary to IT is I had fun in culinary, but what I'm doing now is just ridiculously fun. I have often said to people that being a part of the Salesforce ecosystem is like being a part of a secret society, because nobody knows how much fun that we're having. And so, and I have a much better quality of life. As I said, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I happen to be in a position with a company where I have unlimited paid time off. So it's definitely a lot easier to take care of myself, my mental health and my physical well-being, because with the unlimited paid time off comes the sick time. So, and for once, in a long time, I have a future to look forward to. Being in sales, working as a Salesforce administrator, I have hopes of someday buying a house, and being a little more financially secure than I was working in culinary. So those are two of the biggest things: the quality of life and the financial security.
I like it. I like it. And what about the monetary benefits? Do you see any financial difference in terms of what you were making in your past profession versus in the technology world?
Oh my God, the the financial benefits are tremendous. There is a big difference in what you make in the world of culinary. I mean, a chef with 20 years of experience, yeah, they're gonna do well. But coming into Salesforce, I am already at that level of a chef with 20 years of experience as far as when you compare the salary. Well, 20 years may be a bit much, but I'm definitely a lot better off than I was working in the kitchen.
Yeah, when people talk to me, a lot of my customers and clients, I tell them that I love technology. I have grown up in technology. I tell them that if you are non-technical, I started as a non-technical person on shop floor as a production engineer. So if you get into the technology world, the minimum that you start with is probably the maximum in the non-technical world, and sky is the limit. So once you get your foot in the door, it's all about just going in and exploring different technologies. And the best part about working in technology is that it always evolves. So when you started, and again, if I were to give an analogy, maybe you started as a chef who specializes in cooking Asian food. In technology, it's not like you can today you can specialize in one tool. Tomorrow you have the chance to go into artificial intelligence, all kinds of things. So it's like sky's the limit. And I think that's what attracts anybody, and me personally, towards technology, because that is the future. All businesses are getting technology businesses. What do you say about that?
I definitely agree with that. And that was actually probably the hardest part about making this transition. I have for years thought about getting back into IT, and I wanted to be an Android developer. And maybe I should say specifically, I wanted to be a software developer. And the thought of trying to keep up with all of the technology was intimidating. One thing about Salesforce is you definitely have to be someone who is interested in keeping up with the technology, because Salesforce does 3 major releases per year. And when you're certified, you have to maintain those certifications. They last for life, but if you don't do the maintenance exams, you can lose your certification. So you really, really have to be interested in keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening with Salesforce, because I don't know how much you know about the company, but it's huge and it's everywhere. And I didn't realize that it was really everywhere until I started doing it. And especially with the pandemic, we are definitely moving more toward, people not going into the office and working from home. So I think technology companies are probably, able to thrive in this kind of environment, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, and I want to make sure that my listeners, I want to make a disclaimer that I'm not affiliated with Salesforce or any technology company for that matter. I think what Stephanie and we both are sharing here is that if you are non-technical, or if your job got affected by the pandemic, it is a good area to explore in terms of transitioning and in terms of getting a financial jump if you would like to make more money. And Stephanie, would it be fair? I'm sure if somebody who is listening to this and who has a non-technical background, it would also help to give them some kind of a number to to get their attention in terms of how much they might be able to make once they start in technology. So I'll just throw some numbers at you. Let me know if that is in the ballpark. Would it be fair to say, like, if you are non-technical, if you were making, let's say, around $60,000 to $70,000 dollars per annum in technology, you can probably expect to start at around $120,000 or $100,000 per annum? Would it be fair to say that?
I don't think it would be fair to shoot that high as far as starting salaries. It really depends on what technology you're working with. And generally speaking, I know there is a company that, well, probably a couple of companies that produce annual salary reports. And I'll try to stay away from the Salesforce focus. I'm definitely not here to sell Salesforce. But even with my 3 certifications going in, companies are still going to look at your background and your experience. Definitely play up the soft skills, your communication skills, your writing skills, presentation skills, public speaking. That will help for sure. But I think it's probably fair to say that, you could maybe start out maybe in the high 70s to low 80s. That's a possibility. But again, it really depends on the company. It depends on the individual, the skill set. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But definitely, if you're coming from a non-tech background where you're, an hourly worker, getting into tech can have a tremendous impact on your financial outlook.
Yeah, you sold me on that. So my question to you would be, I'm a non-techie. I have no background in technology. Somebody who is listening to this, and I would say, okay, Stephanie, you have a technical background, and then you started probably in culinary arts, and then when you got a chance, you got back into technology. What about me? I don't even know what goes in, what is coding, what is these tools, Salesforce. What is your advice to me? Do you really think I can make that transition?
Even though I had a technical background coming into this, there were still a lot of things that I didn't understand because in the case of Salesforce, if you realize that sales is part of the name, that's how they started. And so a lot of the training is sales and marketing focused, which I have zero background in. So yeah, it's great to see I had a tech background, but I'm still coming at this as someone new to it as well. So I had a little bit of an uphill climb in getting started, but I didn't let that stop me. I would say that think about what it is that you like to do. Coming from a culinary background, I started thinking, okay, what kind of things can I do with tech relating to culinary? Because most jobs have transferable skills. So you might have something in your background that you're completely unaware of that could help you in, getting into a tech field. A lot of the training out there is very user-friendly. It does not assume you have a tech background. So I don't think anyone should let that stop them from pursuing a career in tech.
Yeah, that's very helpful and that's very comforting. Now, in terms of these trainings available, do I need to invest any money in these trainings, or I can just go out and do them on a self-paced learning and free of cost?
There are some training programs that are out there that are free. There are some that cost. So I guess you have to really, I would start with the free. I always start with the free stuff. And then, there are websites that where you can go and get advice. There's, Stack Exchange, which actually has a Salesforce Stack Exchange, but it's for all sorts of things relating to IT. If you're specific to, PHP or Java, whatever you're interested in, there's probably a subset on Stack Exchange for it. I think if you're going to do this now in the 21st century, it's the best time to do it because all the information, as I said before, all the information is there at your fingertips. So start with the free stuff, and just go from there. If you decide you want to get a certification, those typically cost money. So Salesforce certifications are about $200 each. But if you sit in on a seminar, you can get a voucher to get a discount off your certification exam. So just look for opportunities to take advantage of free training. So.
No, yeah, that's very helpful. And you would agree that for transitioning or applying for a job interview, they would look at your certifications, right? You would encourage folks who are listening to this to complete their certification and then apply for job interviews, and that's how they would be entertained for those selection process. Is that right?
If you have the support system and the ability First off, yes, you definitely want to get your certifications. Some certifications are worth more than others. I mean, there are people out there who will say certifications mean nothing if you don't have the experience. And in my case, I'm working on racking up certifications, but I am also working on the hands-on. And the first thing that I did was actually volunteer. And so that's what I was starting to say. If you have the support system and the means to do it, I would volunteer first, because that gets you experience. And there's a couple of websites that I use, volunteermatch.org and catchafire.org, where nonprofit organizations are looking for people with tech skills. And so that's a way to kind of get your feet wet, get a foot in the door. Once you have some experience, then sure, you can look at applying for jobs. But it really depends on how comfortable you are. I mean, it's one thing to, go through a handheld training module, but one of the great things about Trailhead is that there are projects that you can complete. There are super badges, which are like capstone projects in a graduate school program where you're given a scenario and it takes hours, sometimes days to solve a business problem. So those are definitely tools that I use to kind of test my knowledge, because you're not given the steps to, okay, step 1, do this, step 2, do this. For the super badges, you actually have to come up with the solution yourself. And that's a great way to test how much you really know. So it's not enough to just go through the training and get the certification. The certification just means that, you probably good at testing, or you're good at, memorizing answers or answers to questions. But to really make sure you understand what you're doing, you have to actually do it. Build yourself a test org, or if you want to get into web development, build yourself a website, get on GitHub and demonstrate your code. Lots of ways to get yourself out there before applying for a job.
You mentioned Stack Exchange. What was your process there in terms of figuring out what are the transferable skills, and which tool might be easier for you to start with? What's your guidance there?
I wish I had a good answer for where to start. For me, I've done web design for years. I've been a freelancer. I worked in media production, so I had to maintain a website. And so I thought, once I got off Culinary, I thought, yeah, it's a natural thing for me to just go and become a web designer. But I actually hate web design. But I like working, I like working in IT. I didn't necessarily want to be a programmer as well. So I've taken, I'm a big Googler. So I will go on the internet to find career tests where you can, take an assessment, find out what you're good at, what, some career fields that might be a good fit for you. I don't know how I decided to get back onto Trailhead, or to get onto Trailhead and learn Salesforce. As I said, I had been exposed to it a few years ago, but it was a short exposure and it was not something that I ever thought about again. So it was almost like an epiphany. That's the best way that I can describe it. One day I was like, let's get on Trailhead and make this happen. So you can, I would suggest just get on the internet, and if you can seek out some videos of career changers, watching a podcast like this, you can find out about people that are doing lots of different things. It may spark an interest. It's really just a matter of tuning in and paying attention and seeking out what's out there.
Yeah, that's very helpful. In terms of what other tools, if it was not Trailhead, what other tools are like other tools that you have in your mind, just for the listeners to start reading about? What other tools you think would be worth looking at?
I started with Coursera many years ago. That's it's a website that offers a lot of different courses. And I think they have some certifications. I've also done, Google actually has a training site. where they teach you how to become an Android developer, or you can get into, I think there's web development and lots of other courses. There's also a nano degree, which is you just take a bunch of courses and you get this degree. And I mean, it's not like a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. It's very specific. And I'm trying to think. Some people go to Udemy. That's another site that offers some free training videos and some paid training videos. It really, the higher the quality, the chances are you're going to have to pay for it. And in some cases, you know, it's worth it. Really, there's a lot out there.
So, you know, no, that's very helpful. And sometimes one of the things, like you mentioned, Google, one of the other tricks that work for me is just going to Google or YouTube and just randomly searching for tools like this, and then watching the videos, trying to make sense of, okay, where it is used, how it is used. And sometimes, you know, I might get interested in one video and then I'll try to watch more videos about that particular tool, which would give me a sense, okay, this is something which is natural to me and I get it. So, but that's very helpful. Now, let me ask you this. Let's take a step forward here. I am a non-techie person. I went through these steps that you mentioned and I figured out, okay, this is a certification or this is a tool, it's good. And I completed some volunteer projects from the sites volunteer.org and Catchyfire that you mentioned. Now I applied for a full-time job and I'm competing against other folks, and let's say that they have a formal 4-year degree in IT. So in the interview, I'm asked questions about the tool. How do I differentiate myself?
It's tough competing against people that have tech degrees. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. When you are trying to differentiate yourself in an interview, if you don't have the tech degree, but you've got some certifications and you've got some volunteer experience, I would say definitely, I think soft skills are becoming more and more important now. So I would focus on my soft skills. And again, those are your communication skills, presentation, writing. So focus on your soft skills and your transferable skills if you don't necessarily have the tech degree, because a good company will take the whole person concept approach and they won't just look at the degrees that you have. They will be interested in knowing who you are as a person and what you can bring to the team. So don't underestimate what you have to offer.
Now, yeah, that's very helpful. And then, you know, some of the things that I do or I advise my clients in doing is, when you are in a job interview, try to role play, you know, live the job that you are applying for and answer or wear the hat of a programmer and answer from that perspective. So, and like you mentioned, transferable skills, soft skills. In technology, like you mentioned, you know, presentation and writing papers is very helpful. So I advise a lot of people in your job interviews creating a 1 or 2 slides about how you are different, what differentiates you, and that also gives you and your interviewer a point of reference to talk about. It's not just focusing on your technical education or your degrees. It's also about, okay, this is what I'm good at. You know, arranging my thoughts, pitching an idea to the team, working in the team, you know, all those skills are important, especially when you are in technology and it's all teamwork. It's not like you are working alone in an island and developing a project.
If you can go into an interview and you have an idea of what the company's pain points are, basically things that are causing them to have issues, and you can, you know, come in with an idea for solving those pain points, that's, you know, and that doesn't take technical skills. So that's another thing that you can just use to demonstrate or to differentiate yourself from other candidates.
Yep. So now my other question would be about community. You prepared, you moved into technology, and now you started your career in technology. What kind of resources you would advise to folks listening in terms of, like you mentioned earlier, it's very important to keep track of the new developments in technology. What any specific resources that you would recommend to the listeners in making sure that they are part of that community and they are keeping track of what's going on, and what is there a process behind it, or what's your approach there?
With whatever technology you are trying to learn, there is likely a community out there, if not a casual community that was put together by users. Sometimes companies have communities. So for instance, if you are going through Google's training program and learning to be an Android developer, I'm pretty sure they have forums where you can go and connect with other developers in training, where you can get answers to questions. With Salesforce Ohana is huge. Ohana is Hawaiian for family, and being part of Salesforce is like being part of a family. The resources are just numerous. There are meetups, which are virtual now. Salesforce has forums, there's where you can get answers, bounce ideas off of other people. So I would say look to whatever the specific technology that you are looking to get into. Start there, start with the developer of that technology. They will more than likely have, and when I say start with the developer, I mean like go to their website. They will likely be able to point you in the direction of communities that can provide help and support.
No, yeah, and then one of the other ways to build your community is LinkedIn. I think in the technology era, LinkedIn is the best place to look out for whatever job you want to do. Look out for people in a similar role, search for their titles, and just go and add them to your network. That's how probably you and I got connected. And just a lot of people are always willing to help out. So reach out to people, ask them for time, ask them, and when they give you time, talk to them about their jobs, a day in the life of the job, key skills, all kinds of things that will help you in figuring out if that is something that you are meant to do.
LinkedIn is definitely a fantastic tool for communicating or for connecting with people. There are also LinkedIn groups. So if you're interested in something specific, then you can seek out a group and join that group. But when it comes to connecting with people, I just want to recommend that you don't just blindly send invites to people to connect with them. It's very helpful if you just attach a note to that invitation. It just says, hey, I was looking over your profile. I see that you're doing X and I'm really interested in this. So I would love to connect with you. And I think that personal approach really helps when it comes to the networking. So I wanted to add that.
No, yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Yes, in this age of mass mails and spams, it's always helpful to put a context behind why you are reaching out to someone and why they should pay attention to your message and why they should give you their time. So yeah, thanks for adding to that. Now, in terms of moving ahead, I would want to ask from you, what are your future plans? Do you have any career plans? Where do you want to go from here?
I am currently working on my 4th certification, and I don't know that I ever want to be anything other than a Salesforce Administrator. There are lots of different paths that you can follow. You can be a consultant, or you can be a technical architect or a developer. I really just like being a Salesforce Administrator because I love solving day-to-day problems. I love automating processes and working with people to figure out what their pain points are and what I could do to make their lives better and easier. So I will just continue to earn my certifications, and I'm very happy where I am working with Pymetrics. But who knows what the future holds? The idea is just to get bigger and better. So I will just continue learning and just going as far as that will take me.
Cool. That's very helpful. And Stephanie, thank you so much for your time today. And I always remind folks the goal of the Superhuman Project community is about promoting multiple passions, multiple careers. And probably this is the best time to explore your calling. If you are looking at switching careers, if you are looking from moving from non-tech to tech, tech to non-tech, I think this is the best time and the age where you have so many resources available online, and the process and the tools that Stephanie shared with us. I would encourage all of the listeners and the viewers to check them out. So, Stephanie, in case someone wants to reach out to you, if they have a question for you, how should they do that?
I am on LinkedIn. I think my username is BrownSM. I am also on Twitter. My Twitter handle is I am BrownSM. And that's I-A-M as in Mike, Brown like the color, S as in Stephanie, M as in Michelle. And so those are definitely the two best ways to reach me.
Thank you again. Thank you for your time and all the valuable information. Very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.